Well, welcome to the Black Madonna Speaks on the Heart of the Black Madonna YouTube channel. I'm your host, Stephanie Georgieff, and I'm so pleased to be with you here during our time together. As I said, I'm your host, Stephanie Georgieff, and I'm also an author, and you'll find out a little bit more about some of the books that I've written at the end of this video. But today, I'm going to be talking about the history of the Black Madonna, and it's an updated edition. So I also want to give great apologies for my hiatus. I know I haven't been posting videos for several months, and I welcome all new subscribers and say hi to subscribers who have been with me for a while. These have been very difficult times for us all, and we've all been in great eras of transition, myself included. I'm now living in a different state that I never imagined would happen. I had some significant losses in my life. So I am somewhat more grounded, and I hope to be posting more often from here on out. But I do want to say that even though my personal life has been deeply painful and traumatic, and it's also been quite stark to go through such trauma during a global challenge where everyone is suffering at the same time. No one is not suffering at this point. What I have found is that the image and messages of the Black Madonna have been very healing to me and have given me solace, comfort, and inspiration to continue to go forward in grace and hope and with great faith. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, this is the 2020 version of the history of the Black Madonna. And my original video, which I get quite a few views on actually, and a lot of comments, many of them that I erase because they're not what I would call conducive or kind. My original video was a promotion for my book. And what I was doing was having webinars to help raise funds to self-publish my original book, The Black Madonna, Mysterious Soul Companion. But since that time, I have learned quite a bit more, and I've discovered more. And this is an update for a new era, for me and for culture, and the uncovering of knowledge and purpose of the Christ, of Divine Feminine, and of the Black Madonna. And as I usually begin most of my videos, talks, and writings, I want to give a disclaimer that what I present through my channel comes from my research and my perspective. My hope is that what I present starts you on your own journey of discovery. There are many voices on the Black Madonna, and all are valid. Everybody has an insight. And I am so touched by the creativity and the beauty that these enigmatic images inspire. We have a whole new generation of poets and artists and writers and dancers and musicians that are being inspired by these images. And so that's my purpose in presenting my research, is to simply launch you on your own path, your own journey of discovering the essence of the beauty of your soul and how your soul relates to all other souls on the planet as well as divinity. Now, what is the Black Madonna? And I can tell you, even the title tends to get people a little bit riled up. And I want to apologize if that does rile you up. The title of the genre of either dark brown or black Madonnas, specifically through Europe and Russia and the Balkans, is the name given to dark Madonnas in these areas. Obviously, if a Madonna is in Africa or the Arab nations or Asia or the Americas and has skin tone that is dark, either brown or black, obviously this reflects the local population. But what's interesting is that these images have been all over the European continent since the mid 300s. And this is very interesting. Now, what's also interesting about the Black Madonnas of Europe and Russia is in the early years, they actually were not from there, which is unique. These artistic images were brought to these regions. Now, there are three major migrations that historians note. The first is, as we see on the left side of your screen, Saint Helen of the Cross, the mother of Constantine the Great. She went on pilgrimage in her early 80s to the Holy Land, and we credit all of the different churches and monasteries in the Holy Land that mark specific places, such as where Jesus was born, where he had his Last Supper, the Mount of Olives, etc. That is due to this lovely woman. And what we know is that she not only brought back the relics of Christ's Passion, but she also brought back art, and specifically Black Madonnas, and many Black Madonnas that are very treasured in Europe, such as Czestochowa, Montserrat, and many lesser known Madonnas were brought to the continent by Helen. Now, the second migration came from Coptic monks in North Africa, and the migration started in the 4th century. Christianity was actually highly developed in Africa and Asia Minor. And the monastery movement, which actually started in North Africa and Egypt, these monks started evangelizing up through the European continent, and they brought their works of art with them. And because these lovely monks came from a continent where the skin pigmentation was dark, their works of art resembled how they looked. Now, the third major migration came during the era of the Crusades. And when the Crusaders came back to the European continent, and specifically the Knights Templar, they brought back Black Madonnas with them, and they placed them in shrines and chapels and churches and cathedrals all along the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. Now, some of the new research that I've been uncovering is quite interesting. And it basically, what I have found is that Christianity in many ways is misunderstood, but specifically the origins of Christianity are greatly misunderstood. Now, the two first major evangelizers were obviously the 12 apostles, but the Apostle Paul. And he tried to evangelize in what we now know as the Holy Land and the Roman Empire around there, but was not well received. So his mission journeys took him throughout Asia Minor and also up through the Balkans and into Rome. Now, the other evangelizers that is of particular interest, specifically to those of us who study the Black Madonna, is the Apostle Mark. And we learn through legends mainly. Obviously, these are not biblically endorsed. But after the passion and resurrection of Christ, the apostles went all over the known world at that time, and Mark went down into Africa. And what we in the West, primarily in the West, do not appreciate is how widespread Christianity was during the first 3 to 4 centuries after the Incarnation, and actually how well developed Christianity was at that time. As I said earlier, the monastic movement began in Egypt, which is Africa, and Mark and his evangelization sparked a movement that really went deep into the African continent. Now, the other apostle that went way east was the Apostle Thomas, and he helped evangelize Asia, so much so that when the Portuguese explorers made their way into India in the 15 and 1600s, the Indians already knew about Jesus, and there were images of a cross with a lotus flower, and actually the Gospel of Mark had made its way through India in these early ways. And something that most people might not know, I certainly didn't know, was that the 2 oldest Christian church structures on the planet, one is in Africa and the other is in China. And they both come from the 300s. So that shows you how early these communities were and how well established they were. Christianity traveled along trade routes, so it was actually a very cosmopolitan religion, and it was the religion of the highly educated, and the monastic movement began there, and the earliest scriptures are all over these 2 continents, mostly thanks to the Apostle Mark and the Apostle Thomas, and also of the Apostle Paul. Which brings us to the Black Madonna. There are very many Black Madonnas all over the European continent, and it's confounding. It's like, why are these images here? They're not quote unquote local. This is a very interesting phenomenon. And what was also interesting is that in the late 40s and early 50s, there was a huge resurgence of interest in the Virgin Mary. There was dogma that was pronounced that always had been in the folk lore and legends and local practices that became official church policy in the 50s regarding the Virgin Mary. And there was a study done in 1952 by the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and it was on the Black Madonna. And what this study found was that there are 3 categories of Black Madonnas. There's images that present in ways similar to the artist, which means if you're an African artist, you produce art that looks like Africans. The second category is images that have been darkened from years of exposure to elements and smoke. What I like to say in my talks is that 800 years of candle smoke doesn't do a gal's complexion very well. And there are many Black Madonnas throughout Europe that have become Black through this dedication and the candle smoke and basically sitting on altars for 800 years. And what's interesting about that is when the current church board decides to clean them up, the locals don't want that. They really don't want the Madonna to have white skin. They want her to have dark skin. And in the case of the Black Madonna of Einsidelm, she was painted very dark black after being quote unquote cleaned up. So this is a category. But the third category is images that are black for an unknown reason. And what's fascinating to me personally, and basically inspired my study, was that the largest number of Black Madonnas throughout Europe and Russia fit into that last category. Now, in my study, I found similarities between Black Madonnas. Obviously, their color. They all have stern faces. When you compare these Madonnas with, let's say, Raphael or Leonardo da Vinci, his Madonnas look very peaceful, but they look happy. These women tend to look very stern. I also noticed they have very, very large hands that aren't really to scale with the rest of their bodies. And that these images are placed in shrines along the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. And many of these images have stories of discovery that are often the same. They're found in caves, they're found buried, they're found because cows are mooing over a hillside, they wash up on the shore. They have very, very interesting stories of discovery. The other thing I found very interesting about the Black Madonnas is that there's no known artist associated with them. If there is an artist, it's considered to be St. Luke the Evangelist. And he is the one that wrote the Gospel of Luke as well as Acts of the Apostles. But he's also considered a healer, a physician, but also an artist. And it's striking. I did a study on Madonnas in general. There are hundreds of Madonnas throughout the European continent and the Holy Land that are attributed to him, and a large portion of these are Black Madonnas. Now, this quote really inspired me in terms of my research. And the quote states, "Art is the creation of organs through which the gods are able to speak to humanity." And this is by Rudolf Steiner in a lecture cycle called The Influence of Spiritual Beings on Man. And this lovely sentence is basically saying that art is a way that the spiritual world, which divinity speaks to humanity. And for me, what's interesting specifically about the Black Madonna is what is it that the spiritual world is saying to us through these very enigmatic and mysterious images. Now, the Black Madonna is a symbol of many things. Something of interest to me is that the genre is symbolic of the first millennia of Christianity. It really, really is. And I found that fascinating, and it's spurred me into incredibly interesting research that for me opened my eyes to the richness of Christian history, but also a lot of unknowns for me as an American in the 20th and 21st century. The Madonna as an artistic genre is an art form, is also symbolic of the human soul. Now, I personally believe that Mary was a historical figure. And from what we hear in the Gospels, she was one of the first humans to say yes to the Christ. She represents, through her deeds, her life, the highest potential of the human being to say yes to divinity, to be a container for divinity, and to birth the Christ within. Now, this slide shows an image of Isis and Horus, and then on the right side is Our Lady of Hall, which is found in Belgium. And I chose these two images because, from my research and my understanding, the artistic expression of the Virgin Mary is an incredible document of the evolution of the mysteries. And mysteries are those experiences that reveal divinity to humanity. Now, many statues of Isis show her with her hands up to the heavens, and her statement is, "No man may lift my veil." And this image of this orb is basically showing that cosmic wisdom comes from the heavens. And when we look at that, we see the contrast of the Black Madonnas, who have very, very large hands. And for me, this shows the transformation of wisdom coming from the cosmos and coming down to earth. The Black Madonna is a continuation of images of the divine feminine and the divine mother that go from Asherah, who is a Semitic goddess and consort to Yahweh, to Isis, the divine mother, and to the Virgin Mary. And they show the evolution of the relationship of divinity, cosmic wisdom, and humanity. Now, the Black Madonna appeared as a Christian art form in the 4th century. And this is the same time that cosmic wisdom started to descend to the earth. How this wisdom and awareness of the relationship to divinity, of the cosmic connection, this evolution of the art form shows that we need to create this cosmic connection, become aware of this cosmic connection through our own initiative. Now, the color black is very interesting, obviously and beautifully. The color black is the skin pigmentation of a large portion of the world's peoples, and it's very beautiful and sacred. But this image was black and taken not only from other areas, but brought to Europe, in my opinion, has many, many different messages. And one of them is that the color black has deep spiritual significance. The color black is cosmic will being transformed into human will. Now, what's interesting to me in these images is that we see both the hands and the feet of the Madonnas. And if you look at Madonnas, I would say starting in the Renaissance, we usually don't see Mary's feet. Now, these Madonnas, these Black Madonnas, have these large hands and large feet, and our hands and our feet are the agents of our will. So to me, this is showing the Black Madonna is an agent, as a message of cosmic will being channeled through human endeavor. Now, there's a very interesting connection between Africa, the Knights Templar, and the Black Madonna. There's a very interesting connection. Now, there's evidence that the Templars were in Ethiopia working with King Lalibela to construct these world cultural heritage sites, the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela in Ethiopia. Now we know the Templars were granted housing on the site of Solomon's temple right after the reconquest of Jerusalem. And there's evidence that they were actually searching for wisdom for Sophia, the Ark of the Covenant. Now, there's a very interesting artistic connection that we see specifically in Eastern Orthodox iconography and the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant you see on the left side, the left top of your screen. This is the reconstruction according to biblical instructions that we find in the Old Testament to the Ark of the Covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant carried manna, it carried the rod of Aaron, and it also carried the original stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. And this was basically the first real conveyance of cosmic wisdom to humanity. And it was also the beginning of the covenant between divinity and humanity. What's interesting is if you look on the bottom of your screen, this is a reliquary, and a reliquary is an item that holds a holy relic, specifically in the Catholic and Orthodox traditions. And this is the reliquary in Chartres Cathedral that holds the birth shawl of the Madonna. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but this is what legend states. And what I find interesting is the reliquary looks a lot like the Ark of the Covenant. And then you see in this very unique image, this is the Madonna in the burning bush. And for those of you who remember, when Moses was in the desert, he saw a burning bush, and he said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am the I am." And this was the beginning of this new relationship between humanity and divinity. And in the Holy Land and Eastern Orthodox traditions, we see Mary in the burning bush, and Moses is basically seeing the prefiguring of the fulfillment of this new covenant. So there's this interesting connection. And I also want to say the first one of these icons that shows Mary in the burning bush is found at St. Catherine's Monastery in Sinai. And that's where the original burning bush apparently is still growing. But St. Helen had a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary on this place, and the monastery surrounding that church is still present to this day. So there's these really interesting connections between Chartres Cathedral, the Ark of the Covenant, and this image of Mary as the fulfillment of the I am. Mary and Christ child, the fulfillment of the I am, I am. Now, what we see also is this fascinating connection between, and this map sort of shows this, between the Vatican, this line going from the Vatican down to Lalibela, where these rock-hewn churches are, and also a city, Ascom, which is in Ethiopia. And the Ethiopians consider themselves descendants, particularly the royal family, are descendants from King Solomon. And they boast that they actually have the Ark of the Covenant. So this map shows this very interesting connection that makes a triangle between Jerusalem, Lalibela, Axum, the Vatican, and all the way up to Chartres Cathedral. Now we know that the Templars were in Jerusalem until Saladin conquered that, but the king Lalibela was also in Jerusalem when the Templars were there. And he was exiled and eventually was returned to his throne. And he went back to Ethiopia and made these rock-hewn churches as a tribute to his time in the Holy Land, but also as a pilgrimage destination for his people who couldn't make it to the Holy Land for various reasons. And what's interesting is there's great evidence that the Templars were assisting in this process because their crosses are carved into this and Latin Christian symbols. It's very interesting. Now, what's also interesting is the Chartres Cathedral, which is in direct line to this Lalibela, very much honors the Ark of the Covenant. And there were 3 Black Madonnas in this cathedral, and Chartres was the site of a Templar mystery school. So, why are the Templars associated with these Black Madonnas? Now, obviously, the Templars are very controversial, and I'm not saying the Crusades were purely motivated. There were many horrible things that happened during this time of history, but there were also some pretty amazing things that were going on during that time. And the Templars were all about the Crusades. They were founded in response to the original Crusades, and they endured throughout the major activities for almost 200 years. And they are responsible for the largest building projects in Europe ever. And most of the magnificent cathedrals that we enjoy still to this day are Templar cathedrals. Now, there were 3 Templar secrets, and this is the amazing, wonderful part of the Templars that we need to understand. The first is the connection between wisdom, beauty, and strength. The second secret regarded the 2 pillars of Hercules, and this involved threshold work, basically between living and the afterlife. But the secret that is most related to what I think the Black Madonna is involved with is the secret of darkness and light. And this secret involved the understanding that humans are part of this great transformation of the cosmos, the universe. And we are part of transforming the cosmos from a cosmos of wisdom into a cosmos of love. And the secret involved the fact that humans have what is called an etheric body. And this is basically our life body. We can't really see it with our eyes, but we have an etheric body. And our etheric body receives cosmic etheric life energy from the universe, and it gets transformed in our etheric body and is breathed out, not with our physical breath, but with our etheric breath. And when we breathe out this transformed cosmic energy, the color is actually black, and it creates this vessel, this void that resonates the harmony of the spheres of the cosmos. And this is how we're transforming. Now, if the knowledge of exactly how this works got into the wrong hands, the result could be absolutely catastrophic for the evolution of the universe. And the Templars realized that humanity's morals weren't up to where they needed to be in order to understand this transformation. And it would take great will and effort on the part of humanity to become moral enough to really understand and actively participate in this transformation of the cosmos. And so this was the secret of darkness and light. And I think that's one of the reasons why they were so attracted to these Black Madonnas and put them back into Europe when they returned. Now, to me, one of the most fascinating aspects of how the Templars and the Black Madonnas are related is that the Templars brought these images back and placed them along the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. Now, most people think that the Camino is a road up in northern Spain, but actually the Camino represents ancient star maps, star routes that were noted from time immemorial that actually reflected the stars in the heavens. So if we plopped some stars, constellations on Europe and then drew lines between them, that's the Camino. So the Camino is actually quite extensive and it goes all over Europe. And that's why it's called Compostela, the way of the stars. And the Camino is a path of modern initiation. Now, the Templars were active during the age of the Crusades, and the Crusades were the preparation for the age of consciousness soul. Now, there's all different types of ages that are related to angelic ages, etc., etc. And the age that the Crusaders and the Crusades were in was the end of the age of the intellectual soul. And now we're moving into the age of the consciousness soul. And this is what the Crusades were preparation for. And our current era is where we need to be awake. We need to think for ourselves. And we need to use our wills and our actions to reach out to the spiritual world. It's no longer enough to believe in the spiritual world. We need to know about the spiritual world. Our current age is one of great crisis, evil, and suffering. It's also an era of self-initiation. These dark Madonnas have stories of discovery, of being buried, burnt on surviving shipwrecks, washing ashore, being bombed, being broken and miraculously healing. They have stories of resilience, of endurance. These Black Madonnas, in my estimation, are messengers for our times. They were placed by Crusaders, by the Knights Templar, on the path of modern initiation, I believe, as messages of encouragement and templates for our difficult times. The Black Madonnas are healing images in more than one way. These images have been sought for over 1,000 years to heal, to aid in difficult times. But these images are also healing to the cultural wounds of our times. They show that divinity can have dark skin, that the divine comes in many shades and forms, and all are sacred. These images show that all peoples have divine origins. If you want to learn more about the Black Madonnas, please subscribe not only to this channel, but the Black Madonna Speaks podcast. I'll be discussing specific Black Madonnas and their histories, but I'll also be interviewing artists, poets, writers, creators, modern messengers of these amazing images. I've also written 2 books, and a third one is on the way. The first one is The Black Madonna, Mysterious Soul Companion, and the second is The Virgin of Guadalupe, Mysterious Messenger of Destiny. You can find these through Barnes & Noble and Amazon and Audible. So this is Stephanie Georgieff saying thank you for spreading joy to everyone around you. And also thank you for spending your time with me. I send love and grace to you and yours during these transformative times. I'm so glad we can partner in transforming the cosmos of wisdom into the cosmos of love. Blessings on your journey.